Hello.
Hello, Agatha.
You're right.
I'm okay.
Good. You know, I cannot believe it, Érica. I just tried it on my. I don't remember if I told you the entire story. Let me just clean my camera of my computer. But anyway, the very long story short is my work computer died. They gave me a brand new computer after me waiting for almost 2 months, and this new computer has all the restrictions. I bring my backup onto this computer, and now just realized I cannot record Teams on that computer. So I was just switching back to my personal computer a second ago because this is the first time I was gonna use the new one. And I basically realized I cannot do my job off my new work computer. It's just so frustrating. And they you know, I spent like 3.5K on this new Mac, and I can just use it as a typewriter, basically. Hi, Joe.
Technology.
Hi.
I know, it's just so frustrating. I cannot. So I have this amazing machine I cannot use, and I have my old dying Mac, which is on its last legs, which I'm basically using for everything. So
it's yes, technology. It just complicates things at a certain point, is it not? I was just speaking to a colleague because, as you know, I used to be a curator at the Barbican Arts Center, and I'm still that generation where films were actually films. And then analog, and I remember the projection is just running around from one session to the other, and it was tangible, and we could get hold of it. And then we started to have digital and these DCPs and codes, and sometimes the key wouldn't work. There was some there's always some kind of technical incompatibility. So in the end, it's
Jazz, who's with us in here. Hi, Jazz. We just had so Jazz is an amazing artist who, so it happens, had his late stage review today, this morning, and I was in a panel, and part of the conversation was about exactly what you are talking about right now. So that's
yes.
So you know about the analog and everything. So I think we're in the right company here.
Yes, I'm a person from the last century. I always need to actually, especially when I have complex things to consider, I always get a pencil or a pen and a paper, and I kind of need to write it down and visualize it and hold it somehow, even when it's something quite complex to do on my computer, because it just allows me to organize my thought in a different manner. And and I'm still of that generation. When I was finishing my film degree course, I still edit my film. I think we were the last batch to edit a film on the Steenbeck, cutting and splicing, and it was such a different process to edit. You know, immediately after that, we were all on Avids and all kinds of new systems. But there was another way of reasoning when you had to actually physically cut the film. That disappeared.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just came back from, I told you when we just caught up a moment ago, I just came back from Copenhagen when I was working on a project, on a film photography project. And hi, Paul, you will love it. So I was working on, I just decided to just go against all the rules, and I was collaborating with a friend, and he was just snapping dozens, like basically hundreds of photos on his beautiful camera. And I just took a very old expired film, and I was working on my analog camera, and I took like 7 photos in 4 days. So it was just such a different experience, because I think he got like thousands and thousands of them. So it was quite interesting. So I was quite proud of myself of being rebellious as always and just kind of going all the way. So yeah.
Hi, hello everyone. Yes, for all of us oldies, it's quite incredible, because we are like a generations of people that pass from analog perspectives in terms of how to deal with objects and art to this incredible digitalization of everything. And certainly it was different, even with the photography. It used to be so precious. Every shot you really had to think about it, and film as well, because it was so expensive. So now we are under a different paradigm.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think, Jess, that must be like a really interesting thing for you to hear today after what we've discussed this morning, isn't it?
It's delightful.
Lovely.
The fight to have analog back somehow, yes, to
Well,
be able to.
it still is being used by some of us.
Yeah,
there is
it is.
there is a revival, and I think it's understandable, because when you use your hands, we human species, we think, we reason in a different way.
Absolutely.
With your brain in a different way. And even in terms of in all fields of work, from writing to filmmaking to photography, it's a different perspectives, and we get different outputs, and it's very interesting to see, and to not just lose it all in this kind of, I don't know, allure for VR and for everything that is digital. There's a lot, I think, of work for us teachers and students and PhD researchers to do at that level,
Yeah.
I think.
I don't want to prolong the discussion, but it's so intriguing. I recently read, and maybe you've mentioned that before I came in, and I recently read also that several medical schools for their surgeons introduced crafts and clay making because people had lost the finesse of using their finger muscles. And they sort of realized that the surgeons were increasingly having less and less of skills, surgery skills, because they lost that haptic kind of ability.
That's so interesting. Oh my God, I'm almost sad that we talked about it before we officially started, because
this is book here. We have a book here. We need to keep everyone in the room. We have a book here, I'm certain.
So good. Paul, put you on the spot. How often do you still use analog for your photography?
Quite regularly, actually. Hang on, let me turn. I haven't turned all my buttons on. There we go. That's the right button. Yeah, no, I still do it quite a lot. I bought a couple of little 35mm still cameras. I've got a medium format that I use quite often, and sometimes I'll take shots on the digital to test things out, and then see what happens when you put the same things through with the film. But I mean, for the wallet, it's not good, because if you've ever found the website Analog Wonderland, you will spend a lot of money on film.
Well, you were about to send it to me, so.
Yeah, well, literally, I've got some 0.8 ISO film there, which I shot some stuff on, so I'm going to be really interested to see how that turns out.
Amazing. Yeah, I don't know if you were here when I said that I had expired, like, I think they're expired by 10 years right now. So I'm so curious to see what's going to happen. And I used to love doing this kind of stuff, because it's not only that you have to wait and see what's going to happen, plus it expired. So you don't know what's going to actually happen with this. I'm sorry, Michelle, we just have a conversation, like a random conversation, which is, so it happens to be super interesting before we officially start. But what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to share my screen with the opening slide, and I think we're going to make a start, because I think we're missing out on some fascinating conversation. I think we should just make it included, make it part of the seminar. So let me just, forget how to do it. I had to jump. Oh my God, slideshow, here it is, here are, play from the start. Okay, I had to, for everyone else, before I start, I had to jump from my new computer again to the old one, because there's so much, I've been having so many problems with technology these days. So this talk about analog is actually doing me some, making me feel quite good right now. All right, so this is the moment. Welcome everyone, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to session number 9 of Rebellious Research, or as it used to be called, Creative Practice Research Seminar Series. So just very briefly, it's a monthly online seminar which is free and open to all, which basically tackles different problems and questions and issues and fascinating topics to do with creative practice research. And all the sessions are recorded and published on its dedicated YouTube channel. So if you'd like to be part of it, just please follow it or just get in touch. And I'm not going to be introducing Érica. She's going to be lovely enough to do it herself. But I'm just going to say that today's session is an examination of... Oh, this is not what it is. I'm sorry. This is not going very well. We're going to be mapping a sustainable support model for practice-based researchers, supervisors, and examiners. So I'm just going to very quickly stop sharing my screen and pass it on to you, Érica. So if you could be so kind to introduce yourself, and just the next hour is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to all that at this time of the year when it's so busy for all of us that are in academia, students and teachers, took the time. I can see there's a particular interest in the topic. I think it's really worthwhile, even though I'm in the title point to supervisors, but I think to understand the process and what's going on and what is at stake here, it actually helps us to understand more the scope of what it means to do artistic research in academia, and also empower students in terms of what is happening in different universities and in different with a different set of mind, because not everything needs to always remain the same. And I particularly in my presentation I have someone that has this critical vision of what is happening in the UK right now. So I hope it will be worthwhile for you. And as you know, at the end, I'm open for questions and to learn from the audience, because I think it's always two ways. We always learn so much when we do presentations. So my name is Érica Faleiro Rodrigues. My background is actually a very practical one. I did my degree as a filmmaker, actually in the UK, in the London School of Communication, University of the Arts, and my master's was also in film and in directing at Goldsmiths College. And I started by being an assistant editor for projects from the BBC and various ones, and then later on, for various reasons, I became a curator, because I was very interested in the audience reaction. And for almost a decade, I was a curator at the Barbican Arts Centre in London. And so you can see I was a very hands-on person. And it was later, decades later, that I felt this appeal to go back to academia and actually do a PhD. So I think I can probably relate to quite a few of you in terms of almost this struggle in terms of trying to bring real life and the practical and the role of the filmmaker and the artist into academia, and somehow to make it work. Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen now. Just give me a second. Yes, can you all see it? Okay. So this is, I currently work for an alliance that is being developed, an European alliance. And we've been developing this work on artistic research for a couple of years. So instead of just jumping straight forward into what the role of the supervisor can be, I'm actually going to give you an idea and invite you to come into this journey with me and to learn a bit more how we reach the stage we are, because we didn't simply just jump in terms of understanding what the role of the supervisor could be, but it was really important to understand what can at the moment artistic research be. And to do this query in this journey along the way, we invited quite a few scholars and specialists in the field. So I hope with this presentation to give you a full plate on the topic. I bring quite a few questions, not just answers, but I hope that will make for an interesting debate afterwards. So to start with, who are we? So the FilmEU Alliance, it's the only alliance in the arts in the European Union. At the moment, it's one of the dreams and the projects of the European Union. It's to have this network of universities that collaborate with each other, designing and implementing all level of training, from BAs to MAs. And I think I understand the purpose of this, because it really helps us to engage with this perspective of being European and exchange with people that speak a language different from yours, that have different historical and cultural perspectives. So it's a very rich milieu, and I think it will allow for the students that will be part of the first stake that takes advantage of the alliance, to really learn into an environment that not just allows for exchange at a very extensive level, but also one of the ideas that is key is mobility. So mobility of teachers and mobility of the students across the institutions. So who are we? So I'm part of Lusófona in Lisbon, Portugal, Lusófona University. We also have BFM, the Baltic Film, Media and Art School. We have LUCA School of Arts in Belgium, and we have IADT in Ireland. And at the moment, these are the 4 institutions that are the base of FilmEU. We started by compiling a report on artistic research, challenges and opportunities. I would like to say at this stage that all of the reports we are mentioning from FilmEU, they are available on our website. So if you want to take a bit longer or check something that is mentioned, because I'm just giving you a summary and a bird's eye view of these reports, just go to our website and you'll be able to download them. The access is free for everyone. So for this first report, we did an exploratory research. We invited 6 external experts, people that would be what is essentially to be specialists in artistic research, people that within their institutions, they have accompanied the process, and more importantly, people from different countries from the European Union, to give us this perspective on different possibilities in terms of how we could come about. Of course, that it is when trying to answer the question of what is artistic research that we are confronted with a myriad of terms, definitions, and descriptions, and we had so many. If you read our report, I think we tried to grab the main thinkers and the main ideas around the concept, but it's very easy to actually be lost, because if you start just reading the amount of information on artistic research at this moment, it's actually quite complex. It's almost like a lot of noise on the topic, so it's difficult to navigate and understand and to start taking notions that you find that encapsulate direction and of what you intend, because it's not like all of us, by having a definition of what is artistic research, that the conversation it's closed. Not at all. It's precisely the opposite. There are different perspectives on the topic, so we need to have a robust sense of the state of the art before pursuing, before understanding what is key for us to understand and more importantly to search. So we attempt to address a number of quick key questions concerning artistic research, which we may articulate as follows. What are the existing research structures and resources in the 4 higher education institutions that integrate the alliance, and are there any common areas of thematic overlap? Because as I remember, it's key for us. We will be institutions that will provide curricular units together, courses, degrees, masters. So we need to harmonize at this level. What is artistic research, and when does art qualify as academic research? How may we relate artistic research to film practice? What challenges need to be addressed to establish a long-term impacting model artistic-based research within the field of film and media arts? So for this, we interviewed key specialists, and as mentioned, for us, it was really important that they would be people that would have a proven track record of considering this problematic. We invited 6 external speakers. I'm just going to give you a summarized version, and I'm going to focus in just 3 of these interviewers, because I believe some of what they said was really important in terms of steering our ideas, how we could go about with this subject. So the dates that you have there are the dates where they did these presentations and discussions with us. So first we had Giotti Mystery, and she got us ideas like this one, that filmmakers are doing research all the time. Example, if you are making a film about the future, you're doing research to increase the authenticity. But this is research for stories, not necessarily for epistemological purpose. And I think this is where people get it wrong. They think that any research, if you have the hat of artistry, that will be artistic research, and this is not the case. And then this sentence that I consider it is very interesting, because it's something that happens across countries, institutions, that we're dealing with legacy of the history of film schools having been separated from art schools. That's why film schools came rather later into this discussion of what artistic research can be. This notion that film schools will be for doers, and photography schools and not for thinkers. And it was these kinds of division really had an impact in terms of at what stage in historical terms we started with these discussions. Then we had Stephen Gies, and it was Stephen is an example of what, although we are film and media schools, but how we should look outside our fields of specialization and learn with what our colleagues are developing and are struggling also in other fields of work, like for instance in this instance with music, because there was so much in the description of his work in terms of what's happening with music academies, and the same debate we are having at film and media schools. So some of the ideas he left us was that artistic research as a practice that could not be done in any other way. And I think this is really interesting, because it's something that points out that research really needs to have this artistic element, couldn't be replaced by just theory, the traditional theory of or writing something. That the epistemological purpose of research should be separated from obtaining a qualification. This again is very interesting and controversial at the moment, because we just see that artists on so many different countries, in order to have a career in academia or receive funds for artistic research, are being pushed towards the PhD, is it not? So this is something very interesting. Then art research strengthens social cohesion. This notion that we are as important as mathematicians or people that study chemistry, that what we do, it can be done for the sake of ideas or philosophical perspectives, but that what we do often more than not, it reflects and it's connected with the social importance, and that it is vital that articulation between education and research. This notion of how people, how artists can be empowered to be able to do this research that is more in a way that needs to be self-reflexive. We also invited Brett. Probably some of you are familiar with their work. She's quite proliferous in terms of her academic work, and she was also an LEA president. LEA is one of the main organizations dealing with artistic research at European and international level. And she gave us these 3 notions to consider on artistic research. I think it's always interesting to visualize complex ideas. And what we have here, it's these 3 bubbles of thought, and we have the essentialist approach, the critical approach, and the pragmatic approach. And what can we say about this? The critical approach, we have this quote that art-based research projects pick at modern understandings of science and its masters' narratives. They challenge the Western, modern research ethos, making use of unconventional methods. Their promise is that of unsettlement. Critical art-based research wants to tear holes into the matrix of understanding, establish irritating connections, and dissolve connections of saturation. Then we have the essentialist approach, and I quote, "It has become very obvious that artistic research is a singular explorative research, a discovery of and dealing with gaps, the precarious, the unstable, or the inadequate, etc. In each single case, instead of building hypotheses that are made, verified, falsified, like in the science, or these that have to be argued and made plausible, like the humanities, and that these singular explorations are based on what would call intuition, perceived as condensed experiences." And then we have this pragmatic approach, as summarized by Andrea itself, that artistic research is not different in any way than research in other disciplines. It meets the 5 core criteria of the OECD and qualifies as the R&D activity: novel, creative, uncertain, systematic, transferable, reproducible. The quality standards that artistic research activities are measured by are developed by the research community, as is the case with any other discipline. That artistic research activities are, per definition, not more critical or challenging to the scientific system than any other research activities, although they can be. And finally, artistic research is usually undertaken within a transdisciplinary setting. She also gave us more food for thought in her comments, and ideas like this, that artistic research equals research that goes beyond self-flexibility. To let the project develop freely, but then the researcher must make themselves accountable for what they have done. That you cannot do, and I think this is really interesting because we need to bring it back to the arts, because our colleagues in maths and physics say that intuition is key, and we've been running away from this concept for a while to validate our scientific endeavor. And this, again, as previous with guys, if you do not hold a PhD, but you are a professor, you are able to supervise the PhD if you are a practitioner. So again, to remove all this idea of the always needed validation of the PhD. Then transdisciplinary research can have film at the center and not merely as an auxiliary device. Not only artists with a PhD should be able to do artistic research, and this is a key concept that is being fought at the moment in terms of how artistic research can be financed in Europe. Artistic research is important for enabling artists to continue their studies, to access funding. This notion of artists being able to access a third cycle of higher education studies. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair that these funds are only available for who is working on the, let's say, traditional theoretical side of academy. And then that in order to produce artistic research, you must be an artist and produce artistic research by your artistic means. And that film can address film research just with filmic means. Then I have another vision that is our report precisely on supervision models in film and PhD media education, because again, we needed as an alliance to harmonize how we can provide supervision to our PhD candidates. So we started by making this diagram where you have on the left side PhD supervision within an European framework, guidelines and recommendations. Then in this report, we also have these dimensions of doctoral education within the 4 FilmEU partner institutions, existing rules and guidelines for PhD supervision, and most important, the challenges and opportunities. Now, in this image, I can give you an idea of all of the, how much has been written in terms of what can be relevant for this topic. From what is important in PhD education in general, from the Bologna Declaration to the Salzburg principles, to what concerns just the arts, like the Florence principles and the Euphrat Vienna Conference. So at the moment, it's all of we can see that it's a work and a process, even in terms of legislation that started at last century, really, and from them it has had an acceleration, and it's still continuing. So from the in terms of guidelines for doctoral education in Europe, it's paramount, Salzburg Principles of 2005, and because it established these perspectives of what could be core components to have in attention for a sustainable, a robust artistic research. As mentioned, if you want to analyze these images in detail, you can refer to the report that is available online. So I'm again, with all of them, I'm just going to give you a bird's eye view. And from this one, from the Salzburg principles, I can highlight this one, the crucial role of supervision and assessment. In respect of individual doctoral candidates, arrangements for supervision and assessment should be based on a transparent contractual framework of shared responsibilities between doctoral candidates, supervisors, and its institution, and where appropriate, including other partners. And I would like you to keep this thought of the transparent contract, because I think that can be something very interesting for the conversation later. And then in 2010, the EU UI provided an update of these principles in the Salzburg II recommendation. As stressed in the 5th Salzburg principle, supervision plays a crucial role. Supervision must be a collective effort with clearly defined and written responsibilities of the main supervisor, supervisory team, doctoral candidate, doctoral school, research group, and institution, leaving room for the individual development of the doctoral candidate. Providing professional development to supervisors is an institutional responsibility, whether organized through formal training or informal sharing of experience among staff. And then it's the last sentence when we have highlighted this sentence of common supervision culture shared by supervisors, school leaders, and doctoral candidates must be a priority. I think this is key, because it makes us live from that old tradition of the single supervisor that holds all the truth, to this notion of a contemporary artistic research supervisor that needs to be someone that is engaged in a dialogue with others. And this is really a change. And so in terms of these notions, you can also see that the principles for innovate doctoral training of 2011 highlight things that are paramount in terms of these concepts of supervision now, that it's the sense of community and of engagement, and again, like point 5 of international networking, and more importantly, what validates artistic research of the point 7 of quality assurance. Then I have here a more recent perspective, the Doctoral Education in Europe Today, Approaches and Institutional Structures, published in 2019. And it laid out 10 aspects that are reorganized comparing with the previous one. But if we can see, some of them are still key, like the quality assurance, and also this notion of the purpose. And I think this is also the purpose. I think this is also key if you want to validate the research. So the 10 key aspects of the 2080 EUA-CD doctoral survey led us to analyze two main questions. With regard to the dimension of doctoral supervision, universities were asked to address two key questions. What institutional rules and guidelines are in place to organize various aspects of supervision, ranging from the appointment procedure for supervisors to their training? And the second one, to what extent do early stage researchers find themselves supervised by a single supervisor or supervisory team, either with members that are internal to the institutions or from other universities? And it was really interesting to see the results, because you can see that it can vary a lot from the blue. I'm not sure how well you can see the figures, but the dark blue, it's the never, lighter blue, it's in some doctoral programs, green is about half of doctoral programs, yellow is in most doctoral programs, and orange is in all doctoral programs. And the first line is appointment of supervisors, formal reporting by doctoral candidate on his activities, and we have other ones, voluntary training for supervisors, and obligatory training for supervisors. That is like 68%. That was very, very interesting. I'm not to go into detail into this survey again. You can find the information in the report. Then here we have this question: to what extent are doctoral candidates in your institution supervised by a supervisor team with members internal to this institution? And for this category, you can see that it was 32%. A single supervisor was something less evident. And the supervisory team, including members from other universities, was what seems to be the model that is being followed. Then from this one, we came with guidelines for doctoral education in the arts. So for this notion of the intake of all these reports, for us after that, what was key was to understand where we could take all these reports and these studies further. And from this, the sixth point is that supervision is a core issue for good practice in doctoral education, and at least 2 supervisors are recommended. A doctoral agreement outlining the supervision roles, candidate, supervisor, institution, triangulates this process and setting out the rights and duties of all parties. Institutions establish a good supervision culture by precisely defining responsibilities in their guidelines, which provide a basis for avoiding and resolving conflict. Supervision is to be separated, at least partially, from final evaluation, assessment reviewers. And supervisors should focus on maintaining the quality of the dissertation project in relation to national and international standards. Doctoral programs in the arts follow the standard quality assurance and evaluation procedures applicable in the relevant national and institutional context, accreditation, reviews, etc. Then we have here the Visioning the Future Artistic Doctorate in Ireland from 2020-21. And so we can see all these momentum arriving from the Florence principles that come back and come back again. And we see that the notions and the alignment of the ideas change, but what we are saying, it has a continuous. I think in a way it's a rephrasing and the focus that is happening with this document. And for me, what is key for what I'm presenting to others, it is point 6 of embed the practice element of the research into the supervision process, because sometimes this is not dealt with appropriately, I think, by academia. Then we define quite a few strategies for artistic research PhD supervision. I can highlight a couple of them, and one of them would be embodied knowledge and specialist insights, because sometimes institutions, for institutions, can still be more of a priority that to have a scholar that is trained in a more traditional way, to actually have someone that is a practitioner. So many times we have this perspective of not having a supervisor that actually is knowledgeable of the field of the research. Is almost this level of dignity to the purpose that as much as a student that is dealing with something complex in physics needs to have an appropriated teacher, specialize in that, the same is required for the arts. So again, if you want to take more time with these strategies, you can read read them in the report. So now we reach this stage of challenges and opportunities facing artistic research supervision, and what we consider that our main challenge: aligning artistic and academic practice. Finding the right supervisor, just mentioned, synthesis and integrations of various research outputs, this relationship with external supervisors, the support for PhD students, because when we consider practice-based, and when we can see how institutions in the end, academic higher education institutions struggle, this support for the practice side of the work, it's something that needs to come to mind when budgets are being allocated, and on certain issues in terms of government and institutions itself, it's not being taken seriously enough. Resources and networking capabilities, remember that sense of community I mentioned, and then it's the publications, because if we don't have traditional mediums of publication to showcase the research, traditional papers, how can we address that in terms of outputs that can be recognized and validated at something that has actually been published? Because this issue of what is assumed as an accepted publication or validated publication, it's something that is still, it's also out there for debate. So in terms of all these issues, we expanded a bit more in terms of the report, and I would invite you to read it, because it will allow you to give you a more detailed insight into these considerations. For the effects of this presentation, I just think it's important to make everyone aware that these ideas and these perspectives are there, because I do consider that each of these points allow us to really think and debate, and most of them, I think, could create even debate sessions in themselves. Okay. So the opportunities in the case specific of the FilmEU Alliance are to developing an artistic research path visual flowchart to aid students and supervisors in identifying their position in the field of artistic research, because it's not easy. All the system is made to acknowledge the theory value of academic staff. This practical side, the ones that make films, the ones that make exhibitions and so forth, it's for most institutions, it's not so clear to see and to recognize which supervisors are best capacitated for each researcher. Taking interviews with artistic research practitioners that can be used to gain more insight in specific cases, to be published and disseminated in peer-reviewed artistic research journals. So this sense, and we reach at a stage where we realize that we need to, like with technology, and we're speaking about the digital world, with artistic research, that's a challenge. You need to constantly be up to date in terms of what's happening in state of the art at the moment, and what can be the possibilities. Creating short sample video essays that introduce artistic research case studies and can be used in dissemination and promotion of artistic research in audiovisual fields. I think this is something really important in terms of the work, something we're starting to develop now, because it just opens up the discussion by showcasing specific cases and creating a platform where the work can be analyzed and discussed. And then exploring further possibilities for PhD supervision training to directly address current training needs and demands of young researchers. And this is something that institutions really need to consider, because it seems like the acceleration is so quick. It's almost like students are bringing research work that it's great, it's innovative, and it's different, and perhaps it's something that the institution never considered before. But are we consider how PhD professors are being trained, and are we considering that this train actually needs to be something that happens regularly, and that now at the moment perhaps addresses specific needs? And after giving you this overview of these reports, I'm going to now really focus in the theme of the session. I think the previous notions were important for everyone to realize that all this work has as a background. It wasn't just a question of considering supervision, but even to consider politically historical, how we can situate ourselves as an alliance, and what can be considered most importantly in terms of artistic research. So as we had a text that was very important for us, published in the IGCMR journal, where you can find a podcast, and where we addressed this topic of supervision and some of the challenges that can be faced. If for this text, there is an accompanying podcast. The link is here for anyone that can review the session, but you can also easily find the link by just checking the journal. So for this side of the research, we interviewed 4 specialists in the field. Probably you know 1 or 2 names, or hopefully the 4 of them. And they are Nico Carpentier, Teran, Ansgar Baumhauer, and Florian Cramer. The pool of 4 interviews was selected following the criteria that they had to be academic teachers. We concluded PhDs in the field of arts, have years of experience as academic third cycle supervisors in artistic research, have an understanding of European third cycle academic procedures across various countries to enjoy transnational knowledge in the field, maintain a public career as an artist, possess a career as an academic artistic researcher. Methodology and research questions were the format of the podcast is one that brings knowledge and experience in artistic research and PhD supervision models to the forefront, and which, rather than making a judgment, rather leaves space for interpretation and the consideration of the listener. The podcast is the product of qualitative research, and therefore it produces findings that were not determined in advance, has research is applicable beyond immediate boundaries of the study. Throughout, the researchers had an open-ended perspective. Some aspects of the study were flexible, for example, the addition, exclusion, and or wording of particular interview questions. Participant responses affected how and which questions researchers asked next. The process was iterative, that is, that the collection and research questions were adjusted according to what was being learned. We devised 3 key questions for this podcast. How to reconcile notions of artistic freedom and academic boundaries in artistic research? What are the specific needs of PhD supervision in artistic research? And what should be the framework for the evaluation of artistic research PhDs? And as mentioned, you are able to listen to the podcast in the journal, but what I bring today is to get this opportunity to, together with you, to think some of what the specialist said, because I think they are very relevant for the debate. For instance, still Ansgar Baumhauer had this sentence that I think it feels close home to many of us. I wanted to write, and I wanted to understand what I do, and I think this is a typical thing for so many of us that are doing artistic research. Because for many of us, it comes after a career that had a in terms of its output that was outside academia. For instance, still work for 10 years as an artist before doing his PhD. And it's this notion that the teacher, the supervisor, many of them that have this inclination in interest in supervising artistic research, they understand what is the plight, what is at stake here, because they also have been through the same process many times. And I think this is particularly should be treasurable by PhD students, because it means that on many institutions you'll have a chance to have a supervisor that can really relate to you, and that sense that of your entitlement to funding and resources is not just because you're doing something just for the sake of doing it, but there is this urgent need to understand what you do. Then the sentence, exploiting the academic knowledge by the different disciplines, I find it quite central in the artistic context to focus also on the interaction with society. This exactly means that you cannot only involve academics into the supervision process, or at least into the discourse process. And again, this is a friction point. Because, for instance, in many Southern European countries, what is key is to have a PhD, to supervise a PhD. This notion of the importance of bringing the artists to the conversation and to what will be the output of the artistic research it's something that only now it's starting to be considered, and at least in Europe, it's something that many times more often than not lacks legislation. As we can see from the Creator Doctors model developed during the last years, there are already options to open the field to external protagonists, and that makes a lot of sense to me. For the ones that don't know Creator Doctors, it's this project that its basis is in the Netherlands. And precisely they were tried these new models of supervising PhD in artistic research, and to create this sense of community and engagement with practitioners, aiming to do it at a different level from what had been conceived till then. Creator Doctors also has a website. They have also downloadable PDFs of the work they do on artistic research. So I really recommend it if you have an interest in these issues. Then some thoughts from Michel Teran. In the Norwegian program, you always had the main supervisor that is coming from the institution, but the second supervisor, again, a case-by-case scenario, context-specific, it could be a choreographer, a theater director, or an artist curator, for instance. So it's this notion that we need to revolutionize something here, and that the institutions really need to open and pass this barrier of fear if we want to have a certain level of proficiency and a certain level of quality in purpose of the PhD work, in terms of the guidelines and the supervision can be. And this notion that perhaps even 2 is not an enough number when we speak of artist practice-based research, that perhaps you should have 2 people that are practitioners and people that are within the field. And it's not this issue that, for instance, I remember just becoming aware of one institution that I'm not going to name, that because a candidate had an artistic research work in sound, they just went and pick up someone that was from film, because okay, it's the art, so this person can opinate the work, and it's not like that. There's a level of respect with specialisms, colleagues that are specialists in specific fields of work connected with sound cannot simply be replaced by a colleague or someone that let's say is experienced in film or photography. That's something that we should it should not happen. Then another sentence by Michel Teran: there's a real sort of risk of not having a deep research, because that person that might be representing the institution does not have that such a connection to the area. And again, I'm not. I'm just translating directly what the spoken conversation, and what I think Michel Teran brings to discussion is this concept of the institutions also, if they want to be at a certain level in terms of the support they give to PhD students, perhaps they need to consider which professionals they need to hire and which teachers and professors they need to have for artistic research, and that and maybe for this field of the institution's work, it starts to be less relevant if someone has an X amount of articles published in journals, written theoretical work, but if that person doesn't is supervising someone that, for instance, is doing practical work in photography, but does not have experience in the medium? Are universities equipping themselves with art schools with these professionals that are proficient in film and arts and photography? Do we have enough of them for what the future should bring? That's an important question that's I think sometimes it's being ignored, but needs to be addressed by institutions, because otherwise there is the peril of the not having proficient teachers that are able to make this connection, this bridge between the theoretical and the practical side of arts. And now it comes close home to the UK. I'm quoting Nico Carpentier here, and he's saying this: maybe this is being too critical of supervision, but supervision is an extremely difficult process. Supervisors need to be trained, and we make mistakes. So it's this notion that is not just because you live, you've reached a certain level of teaching proficiency in your career, that's it, and you can just go on and supervise for years. It's this notion that a supervisor needs to be someone open to be constantly receiving training and updates in terms of how to go on about things, especially when we are in a world where the possibilities, the practical possibilities in terms of what you can do with the arts, it's ever exchanging, and that the work of supervision is difficult, and precisely it's necessary to have forums where supervisors of artistic research need to be able to discuss their methodologies, their practices, to improve. It's to be a supervisor in artistic research probably at this moment is one of the most demanding, challenging tasks to do in academia. Then we have here a team where people provide mutual support to each other, where it's not just sort of the supervisor as a spider of the web. And I think that's it. So it's with Nico, it's definitely to leave that paradigm of the supervisor that is the person that has this enlightenment and knows it all and just leads, but this notion of a collective. That both at supervisor and at teacher's level, that this notion of building these communities that learn and dialogue and support each other is key, and that for practice-based research we need to think team, we need to think collective, we can't think individual. Then it has these friction points. I don't understand why anybody came up with the idea that two people alone are capable of evaluating 4 years' work. That's irrational. Two voices are only two voices. If you manage to select different people with different perspectives, they would actually bring in an evaluation, which I think in many cases is in many cases much more fair. And this is connected with the British model of evaluation of PhDs, and the fact that is undertaken in comparing to the most of the European examples, where we have these panels, these open public sessions. For Nico Carpentier, the way the British system is set up, that is this notion of two people making the judgment on 4 years of work, it's not really fair, and it doesn't lead, let's say, to an ultimate exchange and validation of the process, that the process should be much more public, much more participated in terms of the professionals that contribute to validate that work. So in this podcast, he addresses particular elements connected with the PhD in the UK. Then we have Florian Cramer that say that there's a huge discrepancy of what is being discussed as artistic research on this kind of policy and institutional level within art education, and what practicing artists also often outside those institutions understand as artistic research, and they often understand it as their own practice. So Florian Cramer, I'm aware of the time. I'll be closing my presentation quite soon, but just to I would like to make this awareness, because is actually at this point of the podcast what is talking about. It's regarding the this notion that we are just creating, sometimes trying to accommodate artistic research under older perspectives that privilege theory, and he's speaking about the Vienna Declaration, and he's quite vocal about the fact that the Vienna Declaration, in terms of artistic research, doesn't speak about artists. Is more just of this notion of how to making it all fit in academia. And then he says, it's not about our practice, but it's about art schools basically wanting to enter the university game, and also understanding research is something along the lines of formalized peer-reviewed journals. So this is really something that is out there, like the big the elephant in the room sort of thing, that if by trying to formalize artistic research in academia, many times what's being done is actually to just try to accommodate and mold artistic work in a way that we should not, just to fit what have been so far the parameters of what is good research and academic work. The discourse of artistic research is so institutionally driven that it has its own canon, and isn't even familiar with what, let's say, the outside world understands as artistic research practice. And this is the key idea. How can we have work that is artistic research work, that is not something that is formatted like a foot that needs to fit a shoe instead of the other way around, just so that students and teachers and institutions can get funding. We need to be really careful in terms of how we are designing and conceiving what can be artistic research, to not in a way kill it into something that is just validated by academia, but that outside its walls, in terms of what you understand as artistic practice, it has no purpose. Consequently, much of the debate on artistic research hinges on questions of methodological and institutional data that have to do with further articulating this epistemological condition. With what kind of knowledge and understanding does research in the arts concern itself, and how does that knowledge relate to more conventional forms of scholarly knowledge? Through which methods and techniques of investigation do we reveal and articulate this knowledge? How do we reproduce this type of knowledge? How do we assess such knowledge? When does a particular practice qualify as research? These are the type of questions that the Alliance will have to confront in order to further build up its own research agenda on artistic research. In terms of the significance of the work developed, and for further discussion, that the Vienna Declaration on Artistic Research needs more intense scrutiny and renewed debate, that for a PhD candidate in artistic research, it is fundamental to be part of a collective of exchange. PhD support must be synonymous with creating a milieu of constant debate for and between candidates, that artistic research cannot be centered around a debate solely within academia, but rather that it needs constant synapses between stakeholders, internal and external to academia, including those who can provide support to PhD candidates. Here are my contacts. If I know we have a conversation, but if you have any further questions or any thoughts that arise later, please feel free to be in touch. And
thank you so much, Érica. That was just so interesting. I always say it after everyone's talk, but I have to say that what you, and obviously we had a lot of conversations outside of this seminar, so your work relates so closely to what I'm really very deeply interested in, and the very reason behind this seminar. So you couldn't be a better guest for this conversation here. So I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise, really. It's a shame that Carola had to leave because she would have a lot of questions to ask, but I'm gonna, if that's okay, I'm gonna start with the first question, which I was thinking about throughout your entire conversation, because obviously there's a rich body of work over there, and you've done a tremendous amount of work in terms of bringing experts together and identifying these challenges. And I know there's lots of documents like that, and there's lots of work done about it. But the thing I struggle with always when I hear to this kind of amazing conversation and talks like yours is, what do we need to do as a community to make sure that all these recommendations we find are applied in a consistent way across the board? Because I think this is what we're missing. We have ideas, we debate on trying to understand what kind of challenges we have, how we can potentially address them. But what's missing is this kind of consistent application across the board, and it's like an impossible task. But what's your view on that?
I think a main thing is to gather. Yes, just to reply to someone just said if they can have the presentation. Yes, that's absolutely fine. Well, I'm going to give you a practical example of something we've done recently that I think then just promotes change. We've made this questionnaire addressing the topic and with all these questions in terms of how we can proceed, in terms of how supervision could be, resources, everything for both teachers and for students to have an idea, and so that they could lay out and write what could be their ideal, and so that we had a representative figure, so that we can say at institutional level, listen, we've inquired all the PhD students, and they are saying that we need to change or to provide more resources on this level, or that supervision needs to be this way, or even, for instance, in our cases, because and I hope UK students more sooner than later join the Erasmus mobility program, even in terms of how students could go from one institution to the other, in terms of the length of time they could be at other institutions whilst doing a PhD, and being funded and supported for that. We really think at FilmEU that's important, because every time you travel and have that opportunity to take your research and be with other people in another space, with under other cultural perspectives, you just learn so much and give this big jump in terms of your knowledge. And we had, for instance, just at that level, we had a few possibilities for students. For instance, I thought, oh, maybe 1 week or 1 month for something, but most of the students actually wanted to be away for a semester, for 6 months, have this opportunity, and that the funding would be available for 6 months for them to go to another institution and research and learn with everyone that is there. So it was really interesting, because you learn a lot in the process, and even in terms of the training and how long, because, for instance, we teachers are so busy. How can we go about in terms of this training and creating learning tools so that we keep updated? I think it's all about the quality and the number if you want to promote change, and if we have structures that are very conservative and are worried about all kinds of things that are relevant, of course, in terms of financial resources of the institution and so forth. But so that I think it's really important to really survey and give a number to say, listen, there's a certain community that feels there's a majority of teachers in this field of work that feels that we need more support regarding this, or there's a majority of PhD students that feels that we need to have more external practitioners or more international guests in discussion and things like that, because sometimes we kind of perceive what is in the air and what is needed, but it's just our opinion or opinion of one or two people. But if you validate, and these days we did ours in a very simple way, you know, we just a Google form, and people could just fill it in anonymously. And it was, I think, if it's not published on our website, it will be soon. But it was very interesting because I learned a lot, because we did it in a quantitative way and qualitative way, even in terms of areas of studies that students wanted to engage more or learn more from. And there it's this notion of, especially with a topic like this, and because it concerned resources, you need to have a number to validate and to promote change. You can never go as an individual, otherwise that change won't occur.
Yes, I mean, and this is fascinating, but I guess when I was thinking about this, it's just so impressive what you do. But then how can we make sure that this is applied across all the institutions everywhere? Because, you know, I think what happens is, as we all know, academic higher education institutions are wonderful but very rigid institutions, and I think Jess has something to say about it, I'm sure, in further questions. So implementing this kind of changes and learning from other institutions is it's not impossible, but obviously it takes time and everything. And I would like to perhaps ask you if you think there's a way for us as this kind of wider community of people working across, well, not only nationally but internationally, just to make it easier for our institutions to you know, learn from people like yourself and other people who do it well, and just say, well, this is a great example. They've already done the work. All we need to do is to make sure we apply a consistent strategy which has been tested elsewhere already. And then obviously, because the reason I'm talking about it is obviously when we think about PhD supervision, when we think about vivas and examiners and peer review for anything like that, obviously this thing is interinstitutional and international going forward. So it's all very well if it works at your institution, but if it doesn't work at mine or in somebody else's, this machine breaks at some point, because there will be people who really understand what they're doing, but there will be some institutions or individuals who doesn't have this clarity. And I think that also links back to this really, really important point you were talking about, which is, yes, we focus in general on, and this is what this seminar is about in the first kind of idea, supporting PhD students, but supporting PhD supervisors is equally, if not more important, because you cannot support PhD students if the PhD supervisor doesn't know what they're doing. So this is such a complicated thing. And again, I come back to this idea of consistency. It'll only work if everyone's on the same page, because if there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 100 supervisors who know what they're doing, and there's another 1,000 who have a slightly different understanding of artistic research, again, this machine breaks again. So I'm asking you an impossible question right now. I know I'm completely aware of this.
Yes, it's an impossible question. Thanks, Agatha, thanks, Agatha, for that. But perhaps I'm going to try to reply to it in stages. First of all, I think it's what we're doing now. It's already something that is promoting change. And I think it's really important, for instance, for students to become aware of these issues, because if you become aware of these issues, especially, and if you are a PhD student, you also can be vocal with your peers in terms of how the supervision can take place. And then it's not just a question of teachers promoting change in terms of, for instance, what are the skills that are relevant for a department. And as you can remember from my presentation, to change from this perspective that, okay, what we should have there, it's the scholar that has, I don't know, 100 publications, when you have, for instance, someone that perhaps doesn't have as many publications, but is also engaging in practical work in its field, and that's the reason why. And perhaps that person should be really cherished, because then they can relate, engage with the students that have practice, for instance, in photography. And it's this validation of what is a valuable asset for the institution that changes by having expressed what the students need. And I think when you speak with students and when you gather data from students that that want to pursue their doctoral studies in terms of artistic research, to have a supervision that understands the practice and is able to make this connection between the practical side and the theory, it's paramount. So, you know, by gathering the data of the students, you can change what I think, and present it to the powers to be of institutions to listen. It's relevant that resources are provided so that these supervisors can keep learning. For instance, if it's supervisors that are connected with film, but even, for instance, other fields of work like VR, for instance, or AI. It's like you need to have the resources, and we come to a point that you can have or the old traditional scholar that is just writing, and writing is important part of our work. But now perhaps we need to change the perspective and to be able to be a doer, because then you can engage and connect supervisor and student, because in the end the PhD student is a colleague, is someone that very soon will be able to teach as well, and so it needs to be a relationship that I think needs to be of an incredible level of respect and exchange, and it's very difficult for that, because it's for the supervisor, because it's to be kind of guiding a colleague, someone that many times has that incredible level of practical work. So this notion that resources should be there, so that we supervisors are able to train ourselves to be someone that is fully aware of the state of the work and the practicalities in different fields. But then again, I think awareness is empowerment, and that's why I think even not just for us teachers to be aware of what is shaping supervision in artistic research, but I think it really empowers students to become aware of that, and that there are choices, and that systems can change, and what can be provided to them can change. And I think if we get an environment where the students are, because in the end, and I'm very, I confess, I'm optimistic here. I think students that are at university to do research at PhD level, they are really idealists that feel that they want to learn in the best possible way. So I think by voicing what they need, in the end, it will be what we teachers, lecturers need as well, that are those resources and that recognition in terms of the practical side of the work.
Wonderful. I love your optimism. I really think it gives me glimpse of hope, and I'm very optimistic as well, but I appreciate that this is a lot of work. So I am so sorry, because I took over all the question time here, and I'm aware there are other people in the audience who would like to ask a question, so I'm going to open it to everyone. So Paul, Michelle, Cheryl, and Jess, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and dive straight in, please.
Well, going through the process as an older person who's got quite a lot of experience in education, primarily, and in art, thank you very much for opening a door that is has sensible possibilities and is anti-consumerist, which is just great. I think one of the problems, as I recognized it in the English, and I'm not English, but the English system, is that every single student is considered to be a commercial asset. And I wonder if that's something that you've met elsewhere throughout, that place across the sea that we call Europe. We used to belong to it, but we're not there anymore. Because I've worked in different places and given papers, which has been incredibly complicated because there's very little funding for English students. You have to fight tooth and nail. It's important. It's important the Vice Chancellor has their chauffeur-driven car and things like that. Bit political. But what is your experience of other establishments supporting? For me, supporting supervisors. I'm not a supervisor, and my supervisors are excellent, and I've had to fight for other people to support as well because they don't have the time. So like Agatha, like Agatha's colleague Janet, who don't have the time to even think about their own practice within the setting of academia, which is incredibly sad. But how is it with other establishments in your experience from setting up this great sort of project program? And you've only got 8 minutes.
I can be quick. I think you touched some really important points there. First of all, I think we need to change how we perceive what's happening now between Europe and the UK. I can tell you it also. I was devastated when with Brexit. I think we can be open about that because I lived for 18 years of my life in the UK, and it was a very important period of my education and of my youth. I could say very formative years. So I think we need to go beyond that, and I think sessions like these are important, and people like Agatha are important because they create this connection. And although Brexit, if we have groups that promote discussion and engagement between countries, and that doesn't need to have governmental validation, we can make it happen in terms of helping each other and circulating information, data on different topics, and creating a community in the field. That sense that of not being the spider on the web alone, doing it. And also, even if the student, and I think probably all of us, students and teachers, feel that we are evaluated under these capitalist perspectives. Again, we just need, in a way, to use it and to fight in our favor. And as I mentioned, if you want to have students' satisfaction, and you gather data on these topics, saying that students actually need these supervisors that are proficient in practical work, that are not just theoretical driven, then you are making a case of customer satisfaction, is it not? It's just I think in a way we need, and that's why I think we always need to remain optimistic, because it's the only way we can change things or find a way to rebel. It's by not being alone, by speaking and by trying to reach out and to feel that any change will be down to a collective. And I think in a way that kind of we're living specific periods, but I remember when I went to in the late 90s to the UK, I was riveted. I loved it because it was all these kind of subversive perspectives at university, and I had incredible teachers that were practitioners and filmmakers, and they gave us this sense that we could change the world, really. And I think the systems these days work in a way that want us to believe that we can change anything and we are alone. And that's what I say, just look around next to you, like Agatha's work, you know, and this thing of joining people, these sessions, and we've met, you know, and just by doing that, and by creating moments, these saloons where we discuss, we can gather strength and conceive strategies to also not let this system just kind of mold us, like, you know, when I was quoting Florian Cramer and just trying to make artists fit into academia, but to make this system recognize and give dignity and the proper resources for students and for teachers as well. So I think sessions like these and this notion that we need to, we can't just complain. We need to do something about it. That's what I always feel, you know. It's something that can happen, and it's in us. And we need to grab opportunities like the ones in this provided by Agatha in the UK. I think you have next to you someone that, and even in the near future, is doing something, will do something relevant for how we can relate in Europe to artistic research that is happening in the UK, and how we can speak and have this dialogue going. And that's very important, because in the end we have, it's not just because of Brexit that we stop having a common ground and common references and stop knowing each other. That's really just spiel that is completely false, you know. So we need to grab what was taken from us and really dialogue and make these bridges between the UK and Europe. Even they are probably more important than ever. And circulate people from between institutions. I think that's key. Every time we go, as I mentioned, I really believe that mobility is key. Every time we go and spend, even it can be even just a couple of days with other teachers, with other students, in other labs, we just learn so much so quickly, and that's really good value for money. And it can make a big difference in terms of the institution's outputs, in terms of the work developed. So it's outreach and impact. So I think we can, in terms of how these capitalist perspectives work, we can also make them work in our favor. We need to. There's no other choice. We need to survive.
You've been very kind, Érica. Thank you so much. And I cannot agree more with you about this idea of community and engagement, because it kind of goes back to my previous question. Like, there's lots of amazing stuff going on here and there, but obviously the challenge right now, you kind of have to bring it together. So I'm so grateful for, as I said, for your expertise and your work and your kindness here. And I really hope that, again, as a community, we can do something about it. I share your optimism here. So I know we just have 1 minute left, but I'm just gonna ask if anyone else in the audience have any final quick question before I say what's gonna happen in the next and final session for this academic year. So I don't know, Paul, Michelle, Cheryl, do you have anything?
Ultra quick. I know it's been sort of covered probably in a few different ways through this, but I think one of the things that I see as a really big sort of challenge is the idea of getting the practitioners, the academics, and the ones who cross over to understand each other and to build that sort of equivalency of work. I think that's the one thing that I see as a sort of significant problem, is because I'm a practitioner, so I'll make a film and the film will be the thing for me. Whereas a researcher might say, well, actually the process and the research is the thing, and I don't understand why you've made a film. So it's that idea of trying to figure out, how do we get those different kind of outlooks and groups of people to understand each other? And I know from what I've seen in the UK for the last few years, we basically leapfrog. And every few years, 3 or 4 years, we say PhDs and research and academia are the most important thing. And then someone in higher education at the top end will have gone to a conference and they'll say industry and practice and you know, international outreach in terms of commercial work is the most important thing. And we tend to do this kind of leapfrogging. So we'll hire a load of people on a sort of pure PhD research level, Then within 2 or 3 years, actually, we're saying within the courses and the teaching, right down to undergrad, we're saying there needs to be this opposite process going on. So I don't know if there's an answer to that challenge. It's just more an observation, really. But if anyone else has kind of experienced that,
you have some really good points, Paul. Actually, I think, and it's just an idea out there to see if Agatha maybe you want to grab, but I think it will be most interesting to promote even a discussion between the University of London and some key European partners in terms of this beyond Brexit. How can we support and exchange and dialogue and create a space where UK teachers and students and students and teachers from European universities speak? I think that would be quite subversive, and it could be a focus on artistic research precisely. And we could go even in terms of those issues of the validation. If you are a PhD student, and it's that notion of going beyond being self-reflexive, and how do you show you are accountable? And because that's really important, because it shows that your work needs to be funded and recognized and has a place that can be, and that's what is interesting and amazing about artistic research, I think, that can have its place in academia, but can be out there for the world. It has this societal, and that's very exciting. And that's why I think we need to be optimistic and not let it go, and just join forces.
Definitely.
Yeah, if I can add something, I think, Paul, you just gave me an idea, and Érica just kind of voiced it quite nicely here. It is something we have to enable as a discussion in relation to practice research, because obviously it cannot be just research or just practice. And throughout all this seminar, I've been really interested to see how every single person who was invited was saying that, well, actually these two things are not they're not a contradiction, they just come together, and they shouldn't be two separate things. This dualism is not very helpful, but obviously bringing people from both perspectives in the same room and making them have this discussion will directly contribute to what Érica was talking about all day today, well, all afternoon today, which is about how we can support both supervisors and PhD. So this is super valid and interesting point. So thank you so much. I'm so sorry, everyone. I know it's 5:03, but I know that Cheryl has her hand up. So if everyone's okay with this, we're just gonna take this final question before you wrap up.
Yeah, sure, fine.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, it was more of a statement, really. I was just going to say, like, I completely agree with what you're saying about the community aspect and trying to sort of join sort of universities and the like across the sort of world, really. I work alongside Northumbria Uni as like a researcher, but from an ABE point of view, which is an educator by experience. Like, what I'm trying to do at the minute is actually join universities together to see how the ABEs are doing things together, and how each university does things in different practice. And it's actually just quite interesting. I mean, I'm obsessed with art. I've got a degree in it myself, so this is why I jumped in on this. I saw art and I saw research, and I was like, ooh. You know, but I'm just, yeah, this has been really interesting, so just thank you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you so much. If I can just say just a couple of seconds, Agatha, I do hope this for me was really interesting. And for me, in a way, as mentioned, I lived in the UK for 18 years. It was going back home, because my work mainly now, it's, of course, for obvious reasons, funding is centered in European countries. But I think we really need to make a bridge. And I do hope this is just the start, and I leave it with you guys and with Agatha. And I think we should organize something together, definitely, where we make this dialogue and we create this bridge. It would be very interesting, and I think worthwhile for everyone. And it's not, and it's going from that feeling of feeling alone, Jeremy, but to really create something, to be annoying and saying we won't let it go, and we will start having this conversation now. And I think we've done. You don't need actually lots of people in the room to promote change. You know, it just depends if the people that are there are really strong about making it happen. As you know, you can count with me for this kind of exchange and dialogue bridge between European organizations and UK. Agatha, you know, the UK will always have a special place in my heart. So let's go for it, you know. You know how to be in touch.
I'm trying to make Érica work with me for a project I'm developing right now. So I'm very much hoping this is gonna work and hopefully this is what's gonna happen. So before I say thank you to Érica, I'm just gonna say, oh, this is not what it is. Sorry, this is a wrong PowerPoint. I have too many of them. I'm just gonna say that next month, what we have is our very own Paul. When I say our very own, I mean from Staffordshire University. Where are you, Paul? Here it is. So Paul and Fiona Graham, who is not here with us today, and that's going to be on the last Wednesday of June, which is going to be the final session for this second round of the seminar. And what Paul and Fiona will be talking about is an examination of a multi-component output portfolio for REF 2021. And there's going to be tanks and French-British community-focused narrative and the World War I and lots of really, really fascinating things over there. So I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. And it will be absolutely wonderful to just see how we can wrap this second round of seminar up with some really exciting film-based research. So thank you so much. Once again, million times thanks, Érica. It was just really wonderful, and we obviously keep our conversation going.
Pleasure. Hope to see you all soon, one way or the other. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a lovely one, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.